Hi, and thank you for tuning into Gavin Lon Digital. I'm Gavin Lon. We have almost completed the CRUD-related code for all of the custom entities. We have created CRUD-related code for the category, category item, and content entities. There are, however, a few front-end refinements that we'll make in this video. But the mechanics are now in place for an administrator to be able to perform create, read, update, and delete operations on the category, category item, and content entities. Still outstanding in terms of CRUD-related functionality is we still need to create CRUD-related code for two custom entities, namely the user category entity and the MediaType entity. The user category entity joins the identity tables to the custom tables. We will create the CRUD-related code for the user category entity in a later video, where we'll need to create a front-end implementation for the CRUD-related operations for the user category entity. In this video, we'll create the CRUD-related code for the MediaType entity. As you may notice, unlike for the user category entity, creating the CRUD-related code for the MediaType entity is very straightforward. Before we get started, I want to demonstrate one of the effects of the establishment of referential integrity on our custom entities, i.e., we have established a one-to-many relationship between the category and the category item entities, and a one-to-one relationship between the category item entity and the content entity. The effect I'm referring to is when a user deletes an item from an entity that has related items in another entity. Items or rows from a related entity are automatically deleted. For example, when we delete a category item, all related content is automatically deleted from the database. And when we delete a category, all related category items, including associated content, will automatically be deleted. So let's test this. When we delete the Introduction to C# category item, the associated content is automatically deleted. Great! When we delete the C# for Beginners category, the C# data types and C# variables category items and their associated content are automatically deleted from the database. Excellent. So before we scaffold the CRUD-related code for the MediaType entity, there are two items that I wish to address. The first item that I wish to address is to ensure that the back to list link in the create view and the edit view for the content entity will navigate a user back to the index view for the category item entity correctly. The second item I wish to address is that we need to enlarge the description fields for the category and the category item entities. And we also need to appropriately enlarge the HTML content field for the content entity. This modification will allow the user to enter more than one line of text for these fields. So let's ensure that a user is able to click the back to list link in the create view and the edit view for the content entity. Currently, if the user is presented with the create or edit view for the content entity, and the user decides that the user does not wish to update the database, the user can press the back to list link here. At the moment, however, if the user clicks the relevant back to list link, the user is presented with an error, more specifically a 404 error, meaning that the relevant web page cannot be found. So we can easily fix this issue. We simply need to include the relevant tag helper attributes within the relevant back to list links, so that the user will be correctly navigated to the index view of the category item entity. If you'd like to support the channel through a donation, I've included a PayPal link below in the description. You can, of course, support the channel by subscribing, and please ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. If you feel like you are gaining value from these videos, please give these videos a thumbs up. It will be greatly appreciated. And please feel free to share these videos with anyone you feel may benefit from their content. So let's open the Create Razor view for the content entity. Let's include an ASP-controller tag helper attribute and set its value to category item. We already have an appropriate ASP-action tag helper attribute set to index, which is what we want. So let's move on to the next tag helper we need to include. We need to ensure that we are passing the appropriate category ID value into the index action method that resides in the category item controller class. We can do this by setting the ASP-root-category ID tag helper attribute to the relevant model object's category ID property value, like this. So let's make the same changes to the back to list link in the relevant edit view. Let's test the code. Great! So the last item I'd like to address before creating the CRUD-related code for the MediaTypeEntity is to change the description fields for the relevant entity views so that the relevant description fields can accommodate more than one line of text. We can achieve this by changing the relevant description input text controls to be text area controls. These changes will need to be applied to the edit and create views for the category entity and the category item entity. We can also do the same for the create and edit views for the content entity. For the content entity, however, we don't have a description field, but we do have a HTML content field that will also need to accommodate more than one line of text. So for the content entity, we also need to use the text area control for the HTML content field rather than the input text control currently implemented for this field. So let's open the create view for the category entity and change the description field accordingly. The description field is currently implemented through the use of an input text control. So let's change the relevant input text control to a text area control. We can modify the amount of lines of text we wish to accommodate for the relevant text area control through the text area control's rows attribute. So we don't need the description fields to be huge. Let's set the description text area control's rows attribute to 2. So this means the relevant description field will now accommodate 2 lines of text. Let's run the code. That's great, but I think the text-related form fields could be a little bit wider. You can see here that our form controls reside within a div container, and the size of the div container is controlled through a Bootstrap class with the name of col-md-4. We can widen this div container element by changing this class to col-md-6. So you can see that this Bootstrap class name contains a number suffix, which is relevant to the size of the width of the relevant div container element. By increasing this number suffix in the Bootstrap class name, in this case from 4 to 6, we are effectively widening this div container. For those of you who are not familiar with Bootstrap 4, I've included relevant links below in the description under the additional information section, so you can read more about Bootstrap 4 if you'd like. Let's run the code again. Great! So let's change the other relevant views accordingly. So for the content entity, we need to change the create and edit views so that the field named HTML content is wider and can accept more than one line of text. According to our requirement, this field needs to be larger than the description fields that we have just modified. Let's open the create view for the content entity. Let's widen the div element that contains the relevant form fields for this view. Let's set the class attribute in the relevant div container to the col-md-10 Bootstrap class name. So this div container will be a little bit wider than the other div containers where we used the col-md-6 class name to set the width for the relevant div containers in the other views that we have just modified. Let's change the relevant input text control to a text area control. Let's set the relevant text area controls rows attribute to a relatively large number, say 10. So in effect, this text area control will be able to accommodate 10 lines of text. Let's run the code and navigate to the create view for the content entity. Great! Let's make the same change for the edit view of the content entity. Let's run the code. Excellent. So let's scaffold the CRUD-related code for the MediaTypeEntity. The MediaTypeEntity has a one-to-many relationship with the category item entity. If you'll recall, a user is able to choose an appropriate MediaType item from a drop-down list before adding or editing a category item. So let's right-click the controllers folder in the admin area. Let's select New Scaffolded Item. Let's select the list item labeled MVC controller with views using Entity Framework in the dialog box and click the Add button. Then from the top drop-down list in this dialog box, let's select the MediaTypeEntity. On the second drop-down list from the top, let's ensure that the Application DB context item is selected. Let's change the name of the controller for the MediaType's entity from MediaType's controller to MediaType controller. Let's click the Add button. So in order to integrate our MediaTypeEntity into the application, we need to modify our MediaTypeMenuItem, which is a member of the admin menu. to point the relevant navigation link to the index view that has been scaffolded for the MediaType entity. So to do this, let's open the _admin menu, partial view, and ensure that the MediaTypeMenuItem link is pointing to the index view of the MediaType entity. We can achieve this through the use of tag helper attributes like this. And that's all we need to do to implement the CRUD-related operations for the MediaType entity. It is as simple as that. Let's test the code. Excellent. So we have now put the mechanics in place for a user to perform CRUD operations for the category item, content, and MediaType custom entities. That's great, but let's face it, our web application looks like, well, it really doesn't look good. Don't worry, we'll prettify our web application in due course. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It will be greatly appreciated. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider donating. I've included a PayPal link below in the description. You can, of course, support the channel by subscribing, and please ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. Please share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you have any questions regarding this course so far, please include them in the comments section, and I'll answer your question as soon as I am able. I really enjoy engaging with you in the comments section, so please feel free to share your thoughts with me in the comments section. The latest code can be found on GitHub. A link to the relevant repository is available below in the description. Thank you, and take care.